Okay, so we have just finished our primary and our caucus and kind of looked at how they would give us different results. So I wanted to show you this just so you could kind of get a sense. This is probably not as big a deal to a lot of you guys right now, just because the election is over. And I noticed the energy that you all have for this has diminished incredibly from the students that I had last semester, and I totally get it because the election's over. But I do want you to understand, 4 years from now, you will have an opportunity to vote for president, and this is going to bombard you again, and it's going to be out there, so at least it'll be familiar when that comes back. So we talked about these delegates, right? In a little bit, we're going to talk about something called an elector, and it's not exactly the same, but it's going to sound the same. So that's why I'm making such a big deal about this, so you can really differentiate. This shows you how each of the states chose to allocate their delegates differently. So if you look, in Texas, we said we were going to use this hybrid system, where part of our delegates might be winner-take-all, and part of them might be proportional. Whereas if you go to Florida, they were doing all winner-take-all. And then if you go up to Kansas, they're going to do all proportional. So every state did it a little bit different. Everyone in this room, tell me, why did each state get to do it their own way? Oh, with more enthusiasm, please. Come on. I'm not kidding. What is it? Yes, that's the word. So why did every state do it its own way?
Federalism. Federalism.
Right. 1, 2, 3.
Federalism.
Right. Very good. Okay. All right. So that is kind of what is going to make this very complicated, though, in the future. All right. So now moving on. At the end of your very first column, so we've had our primaries, we've had our caucuses. All of those are going to lead up to what happens at the National Convention. So we saw some historic video clips from the National Convention. You saw the 68 convention and the 72 convention. I'm going to show you what it looks like today. It's similar, right? This is showing you the actual vote. So there are two significant things that are done at the National Convention. Okay, so we're going to choose the president and the vice presidential candidate formally, based on what's happened with the primary and the caucus. But remember, the other thing that we're doing is we're approving the party platform. Remind me, Gracie, what was the party platform?
Is it like their ideals that they believe in?
Absolutely, that's what it is. It's the stuff that they say, this is what we want to accomplish. And so the goal of the party is to get people elected so that they will then advance those things. So all of those delegates that are representing our will, they're not useless. They're not just going and just doing exactly what we want them to do. Yes, they're representing our will in terms of candidate, but they're also voting on a party platform. That's a really big deal in a lot of ways, because that's going to be kind of like the soul of like what the party says they're going to stand for. So I want you guys to see what the voting for the presidency looks like, just so you can see the pomp and circumstance that happens. No, not that.
Democratic National Convention Secretary Alice Travis Germond. I will now ask our Convention Secretary to call the roll of the states. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, and thank you. Now, according to the rules passed by this convention, following the nominating speeches for president, we proceed immediately to the roll call. The roll call shall continue until we have a nominee whom I believe will be our next president. It is now my honor to begin with the great state of Alabama. Alabama, you have 60 votes. How do you cast them?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The great state of Alabama, one of the most diverse delegations in this hall. A state that is ready to cast the first votes of this convention for the next President of the United States. 48.
The great state of Alabama casts 48 votes for Barack Obama.
48.
Madam Secretary, the great state of Alabama casts 5 votes for Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Okay, I won't make you watch all of it. It's going to go on for like an hour. We're going to go through Alabama, and then we're going to go alphabetically, obviously. So we're going to go through all the different states. Each state is going to get to say what their delegates are, and then we're going to get to that max number. Remember what I told you. We already know what the state's going to do for the most part. Yes, somebody could go rogue. There is potential for something weird to happen. There is stuff that makes government teachers sit on the edge of their seat all excited. Could this actually happen? But the reality is, I've never in my 24 years of voting seen it not go this way. That is what happens, okay, over and over and over. And then we get to that max number, and then that person accepts the nomination, and now the party changes from being intra-party competition to being an inter-party competition at our second stage, okay? All right. So I'll spare you the rest of that. Thanks, Ms. Rosenfeld. Okay, so one of the things we need to discuss, though, was some of the elitism that happens, because we've made this really big deal of how about we've changed this process. We've made this process so open, so representative. Anybody can go to the convention. You don't have to be a bigwig, but there are still some elements. Who can tell me the name or the title of the person who is guaranteed to get to go to the Democratic National Convention? I thought you might know because you were a big Bernie fan. Bernie fans were upset about this.
I don't know her name, but she's like in the process of being like, there's a process of a new one right now.
It's this right here. It's something called a superdelegate. Did y'all encounter that in your reading? Yeah. Okay, we need to talk about this though. All right. The Republicans have something similar, okay? So, think back to 1968, okay? How the party behaved. Then 1972, it was different. Kaylee, who do you think would have been mad at the 1972 Democratic National Convention? Who would have not been happy with the changes that were made? Yeah, the elite. Absolutely. You're telling me that I have worked hard for years and years. I've given my money, my time, my energy. I've given my life to this party, and now I don't get to go decide what the party's going to do? So, the Democrats retained some elite control for their party. They have something called a superdelegate. So the cartoon says the party of the common people. I'll decide what's best for them. Ha ha ha. The superdelegate. So a superdelegate is a person who is guaranteed to go to the national convention for the Democrats, and they can vote however they want to vote. So their vote is not bound to the popular vote. Their vote does not necessarily represent the people of their state, their constituency. Superdelegates are people like senators, governors, former congressmen, people who, like Bill Clinton is a superdelegate, right? He doesn't hold public office anymore, but he's done so much for the Democratic Party that he is guaranteed to go. There are people who are like political commentators or reporters even who have just like worked for years and years and years. They're guaranteed to get to go. Okay? The Republicans have a similar thing. They call theirs automatic delegates. It's the same thing. It's the same principle. I don't think it sounds nearly as exciting as superdelegate, and that's probably why we don't talk about it in the news as much. We have been in situations where we thought superdelegates would make a really big deal and like impact the election. That's never happened. But automatic delegates, that hasn't happened. So that's why you don't hear about it as much. But that doesn't mean you couldn't at some point. Okay. All right. So then I wanted to show you this just so you can kind of see, because there's always this talk about how superdelegates are going to change the election and these elites are going to control everything. This shows you in 2008 how the superdelegates voted. So if a person was a superdelegate that resided from Texas, all of the superdelegates that lived in Texas voted for Barack Obama. So even though they may have liked Hillary Clinton, even though she might have been the person they were going to choose, they did still end up going with what the popular vote was. So there's kind of this sense, like there was a lot of stuff among the Sanders supporters about superdelegates and how they were going to change the process, and they're the reason that Clinton was getting put through. That didn't really happen either. I'm not going to say that there wasn't behind the scenes stuff happening by any means, but the superdelegates tend to kind of go ahead and just vote. So really, even though it's like this elite control or this elitism kind of thing, for those people it's like their Super Bowl. You know, I mean, it's their every 4 year, like their chance to see people that they've known for years and they've been working really hard, and it's kind of like an honor. And I know that sounds weird to a lot of you, but it's like it's their thing, you know, like your camp friends. You know, it's like the people that you've been looking forward to seeing, and that's kind of their big ceremony. Okay. All right. Are we good with that? Okay. So now we're going to move on to our second column. If you think about your paper and you kind of think about your timeline, we started with the Iowa caucus early. We had people nominate or people say, I want to run for president. Then we had an Iowa caucus around January. So at this point, general election season, we say that tends to start around Labor Day. Both of the parties will have their conventions sometimes towards the end of the summer. So Labor Day to November of the election year is when general election season is. So the inter-party competition, where it's Republican versus Democrat versus potentially any independent, this is actually the shortest part of the season. We've been competing within the party for much, much longer. Okay? I'll show you what a ballot looks like, since most of you did not get to see. All right. See if I can make this a little bit bigger. All right. So this is just, again, it's an example of what a ballot would look like. You can go online and usually find sample ballots ahead of time. Again, because we vote on computer, you won't have all of these things right in front of you, but it'll kind of be like page after page. So the difference in your ballot now is you're going to have all of the candidates on there. You're not going to have just one party, because now you have an opportunity to vote for different parties. So they'll start with your highest federal office. Then we'll go, and then there's an opportunity to write in, which I know some people who did. Then they'll go through your Senate, and then your House of Representatives, and then this is not from our state, but then if it was our state, then it would have the Texas state offices, and then all the way down to your local offices. That's the way it will be organized. They will tell you the party. So if you don't know who the person is, or you don't know anything about them and you want to vote based on party, you can. How does this look different, though? President versus voting for U.S. Senate. What's the major difference here? Jared, what do you see as different in when you vote for president versus voting for Senate?
You should the vice president.
True. Okay, so we're voting for a team. There's another difference, too. Sabrina, what do you see as different?
There's more descriptions on that one, with like electors or all the words.
Good. So when we vote here, if I vote for Bob Corker, I'm voting for Bob Corker. I just like to say his name. If I am voting for Mitt Romney, I'm really not voting for Mitt Romney. I'm voting for an elector who will then maybe go vote for Mitt Romney. All right, so let's talk through that a little bit. Okay, so how does the Electoral College work? You guys got any ideas? Oh, this is going to be a long day, y'all. You're killing me. I know it's Friday. What do we know? Let's just shout out things we know. Go ahead, Andrew.
So based on the votes that, you know, from people from each county or area or state, they put in, the electors will basically take that into consideration for each state, and then they'll, based on what people in each county or whatever voted for, they're gonna cast their votes, which are the electoral votes.
Yes.
And at least 270 are needed for a candidate to win.
Awesome. Everything you said was right there. Peyton, what do you know?
There's different numbers of electoral colleges per state.
Yeah.
So like I think it's based on population, but I could be wrong.
Close to population. It's not completely, but it's similar to that. It's a good idea. What else do we know? Why do we have an electoral college?
To make sure things are equal.
To make sure what?
Like for example, in some areas or some, like you have more people concentrated in like say metropolitan areas, like, but geographically that's like a really, really